Hi everyone. So in this video we will be doing the second part of structuralism. So we were dealing with the questions that were asked from structuralism from December 2018 to December 2021 and June 2022 cycles merged examination. So let's look at the remaining questions from structuralism. So the first question is, which of the following statements is correct? So in the previous video I have already mentioned about long and parole. So here you can find two questions that are again asked from long and parole. So we will be dealing with that jointly. So which of the following statements is correct? Long is the language system and parole the individual usage. Long is the language system and parole the individual usage. Long is the language usage and parole the individual system. Long is the language in abeyance and parole the individual application. Long is the language collective and parole the individual deviation. So we know that we have already discussed about it. So we know the answer. Language is the language system and parole is the individual usage. So long, we know that the discussion concerning long and parole, it was first suggested by Ferdinand de Saussure, and it was popularized in his course in general linguistics. So we know about course in general linguistics. It was a series of university lectures given by Saussure, which was collected by two of his students and which was published posthumously in 1916. So he introduces the concept of long and parole. So long is a complete system of linguistic science or a set of conventions and rules shared by all the speakers of the language. So long, it actually represents a system of rules. It represents a system of rules, of usages, meanings and structures, and these are the products of the human ability to create language. Okay, these are the products of the human ability to create language, and these are all shared by members of a specific speech. These are shared by members of a particular language. For example, members of English, members of Hindi, members of Tamil, all of them have their own long. Okay. So, parole, it is a physical manifestation of the speech. That is, parole is often, we can say parole is just a speech, or it is often equated with what we call as the speech. So, it is the concrete realization of the collectively internalized system, that is the long. So, we can say that parole is a concrete realization of long. Okay, parole is the concrete realization of long. It is the individual performance of the language, and this it reflects, that is parole, long is something that is independent of the speaker, or it is pre-exist of the speaker. But parole, it reflects the personality, it reflects the creativity, the psychological capabilities of an individual speaker. Okay, long, it is independent of the individual, while parole, it reflects the personality, creativity, or we can say psychological capabilities of an individual speaker. I think this image would give you a better idea. So long is something that is shared by a community, and parole is what the individual speaks. So let's go back to the question. Which of the following statements is correct? Long is the language system and parole the individual usage. So from the very first option, we know that is the correct answer. That is option A. So the correct answer is option A. So similarly, there was another question from another question from Saussure's log. Which one of the following is correct about Saussure's analysis of language? Which one of the following is correct about Saussure's analysis of language? Long is the system of a language. Parole focuses on language as a system at a particular time. Long is the particular instance of speech and writing. Parole is the study of language over a period of time. Again, we know the correct answer. Long is the system of language. That's the correct answer, because parole focuses on language as a system at a particular time. That's incorrect. Long is the particular instance of speech and writing. That's also wrong. Parole is a study of language over a period of time. That is also wrong. So the correct answer is option A. Long is the system of language. Okay. So now let's move on to the next question. Most of these works comes under structuralism. So arrange the following in the chronological order of publication. Arrange the following in the chronological order of publication. Aspects of theory of syntax, course in general linguistics, semiotics and the philosophy of language, how to do things with words, aspects of the theory of syntax, course in general linguistics, semiotics and the philosophy of language, how to do things with words. So these are the given options. So let's look at these works individually. So aspects of theory of syntax, it is actually a work written by Noam Chomsky and it was published in 1965. Aspects of theory of syntax by Noam Chomsky in 1965. So aspects, it's actually one of the most important works of Chomsky, because it is in this work that Chomsky presented a more deeper, or we can say a more extensive reformulation of TG grammar, that is transformational TGG grammar, that is transformational generative grammar, which is actually a new kind of syntactic theory, and he has actually introduced this theory in 1950 with the publication of his first work, that is Syntactic Structures. Okay, and this is a continuation, aspects of theory of syntax in 1965. So if you look at this particular aspects of theory of syntax, you can find that this actually presents his epistemological assumptions with a view to establishing linguistic theory to making it formal, that is a manipulation of simples and rules. So that is aspects of theory of syntax. Coming to the next work, so remember 1965 by Noam Chomsky. Then the second work is Course in General Linguistics. The second work is Course in General Linguistics by Ferdinand de Saussure in 1916. Course in General Linguistics by Ferdinand de Saussure in 1916. So as we mentioned just now, Course in General Linguistics is a book compiled by two of his students, that is Charles Bailey and Albert Zechaye. So both of them, they were students of Ferdinand de Saussure. So these are actually the notes compiled by them, and on the basis of the notes on lectures given by Saussure at the University of Geneva when he taught there, that is actually between 1906 and 1911. Later this work was published posthumously, that is after Saussure's death, and it is generally regarded as the starting point of structural linguistics. Okay, Course in General Linguistics, it is regarded as the starting point of structural linguistics, and we know about structural linguistics, it was actually the beginning of structuralism in linguistics, an approach to linguistics which was established in the first half of the 20th century. So we can say this can be called as an inauguration of structuralism, and this was actually put forward by this Prague Linguistic Circle. So that is Course in General Linguistics. So remember 1916. Then the next work is Semiotics and the Philosophy of Language. Semiotics and the Philosophy of Language by Umberto Eco. This is a work written by Umberto Eco, published in 1984. So the Semiotics and Philosophy of Language, this is about Umberto Eco's view on science. So here also he comprehends the entire tradition of the doctrines of science through all the what can we say, symbolic and allegorical readings of the holy scriptures, of the canonical work holy scriptures, then the varying insights of the fields of philosophy and rhetoric, and also the modern positions of literary criticism. So here you can find that the Semiotics and Philosophy of Language, there are many chapters there, and each individual chapters, they are devoted to the nature of the science. They are devoted to the nature of the science, the theory of definition, mirror images, then paintings, films, etc. So 1984. Then How to Do Things with Words. It's a work by J.L. Austin in 1962. So if we chronologically arrange them, the first work to be published is 1916, Course in General Linguistics. Then we have How to Do Things with Work, 1962. Aspects of Theory of Syntax, 1965. Semiotics and the Philosophy of Language, 1984. So here the correct options are B, D, A and C. B, D, A and C. B for, B, D, A and C. 1916, 1962, 1965 and 1984. That comes as option C. So the correct answer is option C. Now let's look at the next question. Given below are two statements. One is labeled as assertion A and the other is labeled as reason R. Given below are two statements. One is labeled as assertion A and the other is labeled as reason R. So assertion A, signs are never neutral or innocent. In all cases, signs are organized into systems that convey some meaning. So here it is a assertion reason question. So what you have to do is that at first you have to identify if both the statements are correct, and then you have to identify whether the assertion is reasoned out in the reason. So that's the things that we have to take care of. So assertion, signs are never neutral or innocent. Signs are never neutral or innocent. In all cases, signs are organized into systems that convey some meaning. So speaking about semiotics and signs, we know that in semiotics, a sign is anything that communicates a meaning. That is not the sign itself to the interpreter of the sign. Okay, for example, a sign is anything that gives a meaning to the interpreter of the sign. Okay, but if I understand what that thing means, then it is a sign. So the meaning, it can be intentional. For example, if I see a red color, I can interpret it as the sign of love. I can interpret it as a sign of violence, as a sign of blood, so a sign of stop, etc. So the meaning can be intentional, as when a word is uttered with a specific meaning, or unintentional, as when a symptom is taken as a sign of a particular medical condition. So signs can communicate through any of these senses: visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory, or taste. So let's look at the option. Signs are never neutral or innocent. Signs are never neutral or innocent. In all cases, signs are organized into systems that convey some meaning. Okay, so that's the correct answer. So here you can find that both A and R are true. Signs are never neutral or innocent. Signs are, the meaning of the signs are always, it can be unintentional, it can be intentional, it can be interpretive, and signs are organized into systems that convey the meaning. As I said earlier, a red color, it can stand for anything, but at that particular context, it's organized into a system that gives it a meaning. Okay, so if you look at the option, we can say that both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A. Both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A. Okay, so that is the correct option is option A. So now let's look at the next question. Which of the following statements describe correctly the basic assumption of structuralism? Which of these statements describe correctly the basic assumption of structuralism? So as I said earlier, you have to understand what structuralism stands for, or the major intentions or the major assumptions of structuralism. Structuralism is concerned with signs and signification. Structuralism is concerned with signs and signification. That's a correct statement. A structuralist theory considers only verbal conventions and codes. Structuralism began in the works of Jacques Derrida that influenced the 20th century literary criticism. Structural challenges the long-standing belief that literature reflects a given reality. All signs are arbitrary, but without them we cannot comprehend reality. All signs are arbitrary, but without them we cannot comprehend reality. So here speaking about structuralism, we know it's a general theory of culture and methodology that implies that elements of human culture must be understood by way of their relationship to a broader system. Okay, it's a general theory of culture and methodology that implies that elements of human culture must be understood by the way of that is, everything is made from a structure. So you have to, that is the thing is that if you are studying something precisely, then it exists not as an individual, but it exists in relation to a wider space. So you have to understand the wider space, which in itself belongs to another wider space. So structuralism, it is a theory of culture and methodology that implies that elements of human culture, it should be understood in its way of its relationship to a broader system. It works to uncover the structures that underlie all the things that humans do, think, perceive, and feel. Okay, it works to uncover the structures that underlie all the things that humans do, think, perceive, and feel. So, the origins of structuralism, as per the options, it is not from the works of Derrida, that is post-structuralism. The origins of structuralism are connected with the work of Ferdinand de Saussure on linguistics, along with the linguistics of the Prague and Moscow circles. That is another thing that you have to remember. The origins of structuralism, they are connected with the works of Saussure on linguistics and the Prague and Moscow linguistic schools. And speaking about Ferdinand de Saussure, we know that Saussure, structural linguist, it propounded three related concepts. Okay, it propounded three related concepts. At first, he brings a distinction between long and parole. We have discussed that abundantly, so I'm not going to explain it in detail again. So Saussure argued for a distinction between long and parole, and according to him, language is equal to long and parole. Sein is equal to signifier plus signified, and we know about long. Long is the idealized abstraction of a language, while parole is the language as actually used in the daily language, an individual utterance of the language. And we know about signifier. Signified is the abstract concept or the idea, and signifier is the perceived sound or the visual image, and both these together creates the sign. Then his next concept is, because different languages have different words to refer to the same objects or concepts, there is no reason why a signifier is used to express a given. So we can say that the relationship between a signified and a signifier is arbitrary. The relationship between a signifier and a signified is arbitrary, except in the cases of onomatopoeia words. So signs gain their meaning from the relationship and contrast with other signs. And the third thing that he says here is, signs gain the meaning from their relationship and contrast with other signs. Okay, so he wrote, as per Saussure, he wrote that in language there are only differences without positive terms. In language there are only differences without positive terms. So with this in mind, let's go back to the options. Which of these statements describe correctly the basic assumption of structuralism? Structuralism is concerned with signs and signification. So that's a correct statement. A structuralist theory considers only verbal conventions and codes. No, that is a very wrong statement. We go for, it's not about verbal conventions and codes, we go for any senses. Structuralism began in the works of Jacques Derrida that influenced the 20th century literary criticism. That's wrong. It actually begins in the works of Saussure and the Prague and Moscow linguistic schools. So C is a wrong statement, B is a wrong statement, D. Structuralism challenges the long-standing belief that literature reflects a given reality. That's a correct statement. All signs are arbitrary, but without them, we cannot comprehend reality. That's also a correct statement. So we have to say A, D, and E are the correct statement. A, D, and E comes as option B. So the correct answer is option B. So that's all about this video. We will discuss about the remaining questions in the next video. So here we have discussed about 5 questions that were asked from structuralism. Mostly important, these questions were mainly from Ferdinand de Saussure. So you have to look at the major works of Saussure, his concepts, and then you have to understand the major ideologies or the major assumptions proposed by him. So that's all about this video. Thank you.